My name is James, and I never expected a single piece of paper to change everything. It was a rainy evening in New Orleans. The kind of rain that doesn't just fall, but seeps into the cracks of the city, making the old bricks glisten with a slick, dark shine. I had just returned to my small apartment after a long, exhausting day at work. The streets were empty, the air heavy with the smell of wet asphalt and the faint, distant aroma of Cajun spices from a corner diner. I was alone, as usual, scrolling through messages that never seemed to matter. That's when I noticed a letter on my doorstep, soaked slightly from the drizzle, but still intact. There was no return address. The handwriting was uneven, jagged, almost like it was written by someone younger, or someone afraid. I picked it up, careful not to smear the ink, and unfolded it. The words inside made my stomach twist. I can stop it. The curse. Meet me at the old mansion on Crescent Street. Midnight. No name. No explanation. Just those words. At first, I laughed nervously. A curse? In 2025? That kind of thing belonged in ghost stories or old movies, not the real world. But there was something urgent about it. Something that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I felt an instinctive pull, an unexplainable force that told me I had to go. The Whitmore mansion had been abandoned for decades, but rumors about it never died. People whispered about the tragedies that had struck the family, sudden deaths, disappearances, whispers of a curse that haunted every generation. Most dismissed it as superstition. I had. Until now. I slipped on my jacket, grabbed an umbrella, and stepped out into the wet streets. The city felt different that night. Shadows stretched longer than they should, and every flickering streetlight seemed to warn me to turn back. But I kept walking, my boots splashing through shallow puddles, the cold biting at my face. I couldn't explain why I was so drawn to this letter, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. The mansion came into view slowly, emerging from the fog like a giant sleeping beast. Its windows were dark, the wrought iron gates rusted and slightly ajar. The garden had overtaken itself, wild and tangled, like it had grown in defiance of anyone trying to enter. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something I couldn't quite name, maybe hope. And then I saw her. A small figure standing at the gate, her coat worn and thin against the cold, her head bowed, hair sticking to her damp cheeks. She looked no older than 12 or 13, but there was a presence about her that made me pause. Her eyes lifted, and for a brief moment, it felt like she could see right through me. They were wide, dark, and unflinching, filled with a strange determination that seemed far beyond her years. She didn't move as I approached, just stayed there, waiting. The rain soaked her completely, dripping down into her boots, yet she didn't shiver. Her gaze locked on mine, and I felt an odd mixture of fear and awe. "I'm Lily," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, but there was an authority in it that surprised me. "I can stop it. The curse." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell her she was a child and curses were nonsense, but something in her eyes stopped me. There was desperation, yes, but also a calm certainty, as if she had lived her whole life knowing she had to do this. The fog swirled around her, curling like smoke at her feet, and I realized I couldn't move my legs. Something had anchored me there, some invisible force that wouldn't let me leave. Who sent you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "No one sent me," she replied. Her eyes darted toward the mansion, and then back at me. "They tried to stop me. But I'm the only one who can end it. Tonight. If I fail, it won't just be me. Others will suffer." I swallowed hard, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavier now, thick with tension and the scent of old wood and damp leaves. The mansion behind her seemed alive in a way that made my skin crawl. Shadows moved inside the windows, twisting unnaturally. The wind whispered through the broken shutters, carrying voices that I couldn't understand but somehow felt in my bones. Something in me, a voice I hadn't known I had, said I couldn't turn back. I had to follow her, to see what this curse was, to find out why a child like Lily claimed she could stop it. I stepped forward, my shoes crunching against the gravel path. Lily's small hand shot out, gripping mine with surprising strength. It was a gesture of trust, of necessity, and maybe, unknowingly, of fate. We stood together at the gate for a moment, listening to the mansion breathe around us. And I knew, with a certainty I couldn't explain, that nothing about my life would ever be the same again. My name is James, and I still remember the exact moment I met Lily. After the rain-soaked walk through the foggy streets of New Orleans, we finally reached the Whitmore Mansion's gate. The structure loomed above us, massive and oppressive, as if it had been waiting for someone like her, and someone like me, for decades. Ivy twisted along the cracked walls, and broken shutters clattered softly in the wind. The air smelled of damp wood, mold, and something I couldn't quite name, something faintly metallic, like the scent of old blood, lingering but subtle. Lily stood at the threshold, her small frame tense, yet impossibly steady. Her dark eyes were wide, but instead of fear, they held a determination that seemed unnatural for someone so young. I had expected a scared child, but what I found was a girl who seemed to carry a weight far beyond her years, as if the history of the mansion itself rested on her shoulders. "I'm Lily," she said again, quieter this time, but her voice carried clearly over the sound of the wind. "I can stop it. The curse." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. It wasn't disbelief or fear, it was the realization that there was no turning back. Something about the way she said it made the words tangible, like she wasn't just speaking, but commanding reality itself. Who sent you?" I finally managed, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts to stay calm. "No one sent me," she said firmly, stepping closer. "I've been preparing for this my whole life. I know what I have to do, and I know I'm the only one who can. But you have to see it to believe it." Her gaze flicked toward the mansion's darkened windows, and I noticed the way the shadows seemed to bend toward her, almost like the building itself was alive, waiting for her approval. I shivered involuntarily, not just from the cold but from a sense of awe and dread that settled over me. "Why me?" I asked. "Why am I here? I don't understand any of this." Lily hesitated, then placed a small, cold hand on mine. It was delicate but firm, and in that touch, I felt an unspoken plea for trust. "Because I need someone to witness it. Someone to know the truth. And I think you can help me." I wanted to protest, to tell her I wasn't capable of anything heroic or brave, but I couldn't. Her eyes held me captive. They were not just eyes, they were mirrors reflecting every fear, hope, and secret I had ever buried. There was something almost hypnotic in the way she looked at me, a mixture of innocence and power that made the world around us seem unreal. The gate creaked as she pushed it open. I followed hesitantly, every step crunching against the gravel, echoing in the still night air. Inside, the mansion smelled of decay and old paper, the lingering presence of history pressing down on us. Dust motes floated in the moonlight streaming through broken windows, dancing like tiny spirits. The floorboards groaned under our weight, protesting our intrusion, or perhaps warning us of what lay ahead. Lily led me down a long hallway lined with faded portraits of Whitmore ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow us, their faces frozen in expressions of sorrow, anger, and fear. "They're watching," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The curse, it listens." I glanced around, half expecting the eyes in the paintings to blink or move, but of course, they didn't. Yet the feeling persisted, a heavy, almost suffocating sensation, like invisible eyes tracking our every move. She guided me into a large sitting room, where a massive fireplace dominated the wall, cold and empty now. The furniture was covered in white sheets, like ghosts frozen in time. Lily turned to face me fully, her eyes gleaming in the dim light. "I know it sounds impossible," she said, "but you'll see. This isn't just a story. It's real. And it's dangerous. But I can end it." Before I could respond, she stepped closer and pressed a small, worn journal into my hands. The leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed with age. "Read this," she said. "Everything you need to understand is inside. But don't be afraid. Not yet." I opened it carefully, flipping through pages filled with meticulous handwriting, sketches, and strange symbols. Stories of disappearances, untimely deaths, and mysterious events span generations. The more I read, the more I realized this wasn't a child's fantasy. The curse she spoke of wasn't just legend, it was real, intertwined with this family, this mansion, and now, with her. I looked up at her, feeling a mix of disbelief, fear, and awe. How do you know all this?" I asked, my voice shaking. She smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it, only resolve. "Because I've been learning, preparing. Every day, every night. I couldn't live in fear anymore. I have to stop it, and I will." For a long moment, we just stood there, the silence stretching between us. The mansion creaked, the wind whispered, and I felt the gravity of what lay ahead. Meeting Lily was not just the beginning of understanding the curse, it was the moment I realized my life would never be the same. And as she looked at me, waiting for a response, I felt the undeniable pull to follow her, to witness what she claimed she could do. Something deep inside told me that if I didn't, I would regret it for the rest of my life. It was at that moment, standing in that room filled with shadows, that I made a decision I couldn't take back. I was going to trust a 12-year-old girl who said she could stop a centuries-old family curse, and hope I survived to see the end. My name is James, and as Lily led me deeper into the Whitmore mansion, the air grew heavier with every step. It wasn't just the smell of dust or decaying wood, it was something intangible, almost electric, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Shadows stretched along the walls, shifting as if alive, and the faint creak of the floorboards beneath our feet echoed louder than it should. I realized then that this place was not merely abandoned, it was haunted, in a way that made your skin crawl without a single visible ghost. Lily moved confidently, her small hand gripping mine tightly. "This is where it all started," she whispered, her voice carrying a weight that made me pause. I looked around, taking in the portraits lining the grand hallway. Generations of Whitmores stared down at us, their faces painted with pride, sorrow, and subtle menace. Some eyes seemed almost lifelike, reflecting the flicker of candlelight. "Every generation has been touched by the curse," she continued. "Every single one. And it has always ended in tragedy." I felt a chill run down my spine. "A curse? You mean, like magic?" I asked, though my voice betrayed the skepticism I felt. She shook her head. "Not magic, exactly. It's something older, something that feeds on fear, mistakes, and secrets. The Whitmores tried to fight it, tried to ignore it, but it always returns." Her eyes were intense, unwavering. "It started over a century ago with my great-great-grandmother. She lost her firstborn to the shadows before anyone could understand what was happening. Since then, each generation has suffered, some died young, some disappeared, and some, well, they went mad trying to escape it." We entered a large sitting room, where dust-covered furniture sat like silent witnesses to the past. A thick layer of grime covered the windows, casting the room in a dim, almost otherworldly light. Lily moved to the center, gesturing to a series of portraits on the far wall. "These are my family," she said, voice trembling slightly. "Some of them never left this house alive. Some never returned home. The curse doesn't just take life, it shapes it, bends it, waits for the perfect moment to strike." I followed her gaze and noticed subtle signs in the portraits, a shadow behind a figure, a faint darkness pooling in the corners of the paintings, as if the artist had unknowingly captured something malevolent. "You're saying it's real?" I whispered. Lily nodded. "I know it sounds impossible, but I've seen it. I felt it. The night my parents, when they tried to stop it, her voice faltered, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. They couldn't. The curse, it's patient. It waits. And now it's my turn." We moved further into the mansion, climbing the grand staircase that groaned under our weight. The air became colder, the shadows deeper. I could feel it pressing against me, an invisible weight that made my chest tighten. Lily's grip never wavered, but I could sense the strain in her small frame. "It's strongest at night," she explained. "When the house is quiet, when no one else is around, it moves. It whispers. It knows your fears before you do." As we reached the top floor, the hallway stretched endlessly, lined with doors that looked like they hadn't been opened in decades. Lily paused in front of one, a wooden door warped with age. "This is the room where it started," she said. She hesitated, then slowly opened it. The air inside was thick, almost suffocating, and I felt the hair on the back of my neck rise. Dust swirled in the weak moonlight, revealing shapes in the corners that didn't belong to any furniture. Inside, an old crib sat against the wall, its paint chipped and faded. Lily walked over and traced her fingers along the edge. "The first victim," she murmured. "She was only a baby. The curse took her while everyone slept. No one knew why. No one could stop it." Her voice cracked, but there was resolve beneath the grief. "I've studied every record, every journal, every story. I know how it moves, how it thinks. And I've learned how to fight it." I swallowed hard, trying to process everything. "And you really think you can stop it?" Lily turned to me, her dark eyes shining in the dim light. "I have to," she said. If I don't, the curse will keep taking, generation after generation. And soon, it will be too late, not just for me, but for anyone connected to this family. You have to trust me." The weight of her words pressed on me, heavier than the old air in the mansion. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was just a child, but I couldn't. There was something in the way she carried herself, something ancient and unwavering, that left no room for doubt. The curse was real, and if anyone could stop it, it was her. As we stood there in the darkened room, I felt the mansion itself exhale, a soft, mournful sigh that seemed to acknowledge her presence. The shadows shifted, as if watching, waiting. And I realized that this was no ordinary house. This was a place alive with memories, fears, and something far darker than I could ever imagine. Lily took a deep breath and looked at me. "Tonight," she said softly, yet firmly, "I'm going to try. I can end this. But you have to stay close. You have to see it with me." I nodded, though my hands trembled. I had no idea what was coming, no idea if we would survive it. But I knew one thing for certain: the Whitmore curse was real, and our lives would never be the same again. My name is James, and the moment we stepped into the library of the Whitmore mansion, I knew something had changed. The air was thick with dust, old paper, and a faint, metallic tang that made my stomach twist. The tall shelves rose like dark towers, each one packed with leather-bound books whose spines were cracked with age. Candlelight flickered across the room, though no flame had been lit, casting strange shadows that seemed to move independently, brushing along the walls like living fingers. Lily moved toward the center, her small figure dwarfed by the vast room, yet she carried herself with an authority I could barely comprehend. Her eyes darted over the shelves as if reading secrets hidden within the faded titles. "This is where it started," she whispered. "The curse, it leaves traces, signs. You just have to know how to look." I followed her, my heart pounding, every creak of the floorboards echoing like a warning. The library smelled of old knowledge and something darker, like the remnants of fear itself. Dust floated in the air, catching in the light in tiny motes that seemed to hover with purpose. She stopped suddenly, pointing to a large portrait that had fallen from the wall. The glass shattered when it hit the floor, scattering shards across the worn carpet. I froze, my eyes drawn to the painting, a young girl, pale and somber, staring directly at us. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw her eyes move, blink. My breath caught in my throat. "Do you see?" Lily said, her voice calm but urgent. "They're always watching. Every time the curse strikes, it leaves a mark, a presence. Some call it a shadow, others a spirit. But it's real. It listens. It remembers." The room felt colder suddenly, a chill crawling up my spine like icy fingers. The shadows behind the shelves deepened, stretching unnaturally across the walls, as though the house itself was responding to Lily's presence. I wanted to look away, to convince myself it was imagination, but I couldn't. Something in that space made disbelief impossible. She walked over to the shattered portrait and knelt, picking up fragments of the glass carefully. Her small hands moved with precision, almost reverence. "This girl," she said, "was the first to be lost. She was my great-great-grandmother's sister. No one knows what happened, but the curse began with her, and it never stopped." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart. "And you think you can stop it?" Her dark eyes met mine, unwavering. "I have to. Otherwise, it will keep taking. And now it's me. Tonight, if I fail," her voice faltered, a tiny shadow of fear crossing her face, but she forced herself to continue. "If I fail, it won't just be me. The curse will continue, generation after generation. I can't let that happen." A sudden gust of wind swept through the broken windows, scattering papers and causing the candlelight to flicker violently. The room felt alive, almost breathing around us. I noticed shadows moving in the corners, twisting, converging toward the center of the room as if drawn by some invisible force. My stomach knotted in fear, and I realized the mansion itself was aware of us. Lily rose slowly and walked to the center, her hands extended, fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. "The first sign," she said softly. "The curse never reveals itself completely at once. It shows hints, warnings, like this portrait. You just have to recognize them." The air grew colder still, and I could see my breath forming in front of me. I felt a prickle of unease, as though unseen eyes were observing every movement, every thought. A distant sound echoed from the hallway, a low, mournful creak, followed by a whisper that I couldn't understand. I wanted to call out, but Lily placed a hand on my arm, stopping me. "Don't speak," she whispered. "Not yet. You need to watch, to feel it. The curse feeds on fear, on hesitation. If we react too soon, it senses weakness." I nodded, though my muscles tensed with every instinct screaming to run. We stood there for what felt like hours, though only minutes passed. The shadows continued their subtle dance, the wind carrying murmurs I couldn't interpret. And then, slowly, the feeling of being watched intensified. I could see shapes forming in the corners of the room, faces fleeting and distorted, whispering silently. Lily closed her eyes, murmuring words I didn't understand. The temperature dropped further, making my teeth chatter. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the room stilled. The shadows froze. The whispers ceased. The chill lifted slightly, leaving only a tense, expectant silence. She opened her eyes and looked at me. "This is the first sign," she said, her voice steady again. "It's here. It's always been here. The curse, it's real. And it knows we're watching." I swallowed hard, feeling both fear and awe. I realized that meeting Lily and stepping into this house had thrown me into a reality I had never imagined. The mansion wasn't just haunted by history, it was alive with it, and the curse had already begun to reveal itself to us. For the first time, I understood that nothing about this night, this mansion, or Lily's mission would be ordinary. And as I stood there, shivering in the cold library, I knew that whatever happened next would test every ounce of courage I had. My name is James, and as Lily guided me up the winding staircase of the Whitmore mansion, a feeling of inevitability settled over me. Each step groaned beneath our weight, echoing through the empty halls like a warning. The air was thick with a mix of dust, mold, and something metallic, like old blood lingering in the corners. Shadows shifted unnaturally along the walls, stretching and bending as if alive, following our every move. Lily's grip on my hand was small but unyielding, her presence anchoring me to the moment, even as fear gnawed at my mind. At the top of the stairs, the corridor stretched endlessly, lined with doors that had been closed for decades. Lily stopped at one of them, a heavy oak door warped by age. She placed her hand on the cold wood and whispered, "This is it. The heart of the curse. Everything starts and ends here." I could see her chest rising and falling rapidly, though her expression remained calm, almost unnervingly so. I swallowed hard, staring at the door as if it were a living thing. "Are you sure you can do this?" I asked, my voice cracking despite my attempt to sound steady. Her dark eyes met mine, unwavering. "I have to," she said simply. "If I don't, it will keep taking. Every generation, someone disappears, someone dies. I can't let that happen again. Not to me, not to anyone." She pushed the door open slowly. The room beyond was a large attic, filled with relics, journals, and objects that seemed to hum with history. Dust floated in the moonlight filtering through cracked windows, revealing shapes that seemed almost alive. Old chests and scattered papers were strewn across the floor, and in the center, a circle of worn charms and trinkets lay carefully arranged. Lily knelt beside them, her movements deliberate, precise. "These are what we need," she explained, her voice calm but urgent. "Every charm, every symbol, every token belongs to the Whitmore lineage. Together, they can contain the curse long enough for me to confront it. But it's dangerous. It won't wait for us to be ready." I stepped closer, examining the circle. The charms were intricate, tiny carved figures, amulets, rings, and locks of hair, all preserved with care despite decades of neglect. The air seemed to pulse around them, charged with a presence I couldn't explain. I felt my skin prickle, the hairs on my arms standing upright. "What if it doesn't work?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Lily's gaze hardened. "Then it will consume me," she said. "But I won't let it hurt anyone else. That's why I need you here. You have to witness it, help me stay focused. The curse feeds on doubt. If I falter, it senses weakness. And James, I can't do this alone." The shadows in the room seemed to respond to her words, thickening, pooling in corners, forming shapes that resembled faces twisted in silent screams. A cold wind swept through the attic, rattling loose papers and sending a shiver down my spine. I wanted to step back, but Lily's hand found mine again, grounding me. She began arranging the charms in a precise order, tracing patterns in the dust with her fingers. Her lips moved in whispered chants I couldn't understand, the sound low and commanding, resonating in the air like a vibration through my bones. The shadows shifted more violently now, twisting into forms that seemed almost human, flickering in and out of existence. I felt a presence pressing against my chest, a cold weight that made breathing difficult. "This is it," Lily murmured, her voice growing louder, stronger. "This is the confrontation. The curse knows I'm here, James. It's testing me, trying to scare me. But I won't falter." The shadows coalesced into something tangible, a figure standing at the edge of the circle. Its shape was humanoid but distorted, dark and shifting, like smoke caught in a twisted mirror. I could feel its gaze on me, cold and accusatory. My heart raced, every instinct screaming to run, but Lily didn't move. She stood tall, facing it directly, her small hands raised over the circle of charms. She began chanting louder, the words flowing like a river of power I couldn't comprehend. The figure recoiled, twisting violently, writhing as if in pain. The room trembled, dust and loose objects swirling around us in a chaotic storm. The shadows reached for us, trying to pull us apart, but Lily's voice held steady, commanding the darkness to submit. A sudden, piercing screech filled the room, cutting through the wind and the whispers. I stumbled back, nearly losing my balance, but Lily didn't flinch. She pressed forward, her chants rising to a crescendo, and the figure at the center of the circle twisted one last time before vanishing completely. The room fell silent. The shadows dissipated, leaving only the faint, trembling remnants of their presence. Lily collapsed to her knees, exhausted, but triumphant. The air felt lighter now, warmer, as though a heavy weight had lifted. I knelt beside her, my hands shaking, still trying to process what had just happened. Did it work?" I asked, my voice barely audible. She looked at me, a faint, exhausted smile on her face. I think it did. The curse, it's weakened, may be gone. But I can feel it watching, waiting. It won't be easy. It's patient. But tonight, we made it step back." I exhaled, relief washing over me in waves, mixed with lingering fear. Standing there, in that attic filled with history, shadows, and remnants of pain, I realized that Lily had faced something far beyond any child's understanding, and survived. I had witnessed it, and I knew our lives would never be the same. And as we sat there in the quiet aftermath, I couldn't help but think about what was coming next, what other secrets this mansion held, and whether the curse would ever truly be finished. My name is James, and as Lily led me deeper into the Whitmore mansion that night, I could feel the air shift, charged with something older than anything I had ever known. The attic had been our first confrontation, but this was the real test. The entire house seemed to hum with anticipation, the shadows twisting along the walls, reaching toward us like living fingers. The cold pressed against my skin, biting through my jacket, while the faint scent of decayed wood and something metallic lingered in every corner. I realized that the mansion wasn't just a building, it was a vessel for the curse itself, and it knew we were coming. Lily guided me through a narrow hallway, her small hand tight in mine. The floorboards groaned beneath us, echoing through the darkness like the warning cries of those who had fallen before. The portraits lining the walls seemed to watch us, their eyes almost alive, tracking our every movement. "This is it," she whispered, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "The ritual room. Everything hinges on what happens here. One wrong step, and the curse will retaliate." The door at the end of the hallway was massive, made of ancient oak cracked with age. Lily pushed it open, revealing a circular chamber beneath the roof. Moonlight streamed through a shattered skylight, illuminating the room in a pale, ghostly glow. The floor was covered in intricate symbols carved into the wood, and in the center lay a circle of candles, their flames flickering as if breathing. Charms and relics from the Whitmore lineage were arranged meticulously, their placement precise, almost sacred. "This room has been waiting for centuries," Lily said, stepping to the center. "The curse doesn't just strike, it reacts, adapts. But with this ritual, I can confront it directly. I can bind it, weaken it, maybe end it for good. But I need you with me. You have to witness it, and keep me grounded." I nodded, though my hands trembled. Fear and awe battled inside me. The shadows in the room seemed to thicken, forming shapes at the edges of my vision, faces twisted in silent screams. Every instinct screamed to run, but Lily's steady presence anchored me. She knelt, placing her hands over the central charms, and began whispering words I couldn't understand, her voice rhythmic, deliberate. The symbols on the floor seemed to glow faintly as she chanted, a soft, almost imperceptible light pulsing with each syllable. I could feel the temperature drop suddenly, my breath forming clouds in front of me. The air grew thick, heavy with the energy of the mansion itself. The shadows moved closer, swirling around us, reaching for the circle as if aware of the power Lily was summoning. The whispers returned, faint but insistent, murmuring threats I couldn't comprehend, pulling at my mind with a cold, invisible force. "Stay focused," Lily murmured, her voice firm. "The curse will try to distract you. It feeds on fear, on hesitation. Don't let it." The shadows condensed, forming a towering, dark figure at the edge of the circle. Its presence pressed against me, a suffocating weight that made every movement a struggle. The figure's eyes, or what I assumed were eyes, glowed faintly, cold and accusing, filled with malice and intelligence. I could hear it whispering my name, twisting memories and doubts in my mind, and I nearly fell to my knees in terror. Lily didn't flinch. She rose slowly, her small frame radiant with determination. Her voice rose in a chant that cut through the whispers, resonating like a bell inside my chest. The figure writhed, recoiling as if her words were physical blows. Candles flickered violently, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to reach for the ceiling. The air vibrated, charged with energy that made my teeth chatter and my vision swim. "You have no power here," the shadows hissed, and I realized it was speaking, not in words I understood, but in thoughts that pierced my mind. "You cannot stop what has endured." Lily's eyes blazed. "You've lasted too long. This ends now," she shouted, pounding her fists on the charms in the center. The symbols glowed brighter, burning into the floorboards, the air thick with heat and energy. The figure shrieked, a sound that made my ears ring and my bones ache. The shadows writhed violently, and I could see forms of the lost ancestors flickering within them, caught between this world and the next. I held my ground, gripping Lily's hand as tightly as I could. The wind howled through the broken skylight, scattering dust and fragments of paper, swirling them around us like a storm. The mansion seemed to shake, groaning under the force of the ritual. The figure twisted one last time, its form stretching and distorting, and then, with a deafening screech, it collapsed inward, dissolving into shadows that dissipated into the corners of the room. The chamber fell silent. The chill lifted, replaced by a heavy, almost tangible stillness. The candles flickered weakly, casting soft light over the now calm room. Lily sank to her knees, exhausted but victorious, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. I dropped beside her, my own body trembling from fear, relief, and awe. I think it worked," she whispered finally, her voice soft but certain. "The curse, it's broken, or at least, weakened enough that it won't take anyone else. Not tonight. Not ever again." I exhaled, relief washing over me in waves. The shadows had retreated, the oppressive presence gone, leaving only the quiet hum of the mansion's history. Standing there with her, I realized the enormity of what had happened. Lily, a child no older than 12, had confronted a darkness that had haunted generations, and survived. The ritual was over, but the weight of it lingered. I could feel the house itself settling, like it had exhaled after holding its breath for centuries. And I knew that this night, this moment, would stay with me forever. Lily had faced the curse, and for the first time in over a century, the Whitmore mansion felt alive in a way that was no longer threatening. My name is James, and as the first light of dawn crept through the shattered windows of the Whitmore mansion, the weight of what had happened the night before pressed heavily on me. The shadows that had once stalked the halls were gone, leaving the house quieter, almost reverent. The air, which had been thick with the metallic tang of fear and old secrets, now smelled faintly of dust, candle wax, and the hint of new beginnings. Lily sat in the center of the grand attic, exhausted, her small frame slumped against a pile of cushions, yet her dark eyes shone with something I had never seen before, triumph. I watched her closely, still trying to process the events that had unfolded. She had faced a curse older than anyone alive, a malevolent force that had claimed lives for generations, and somehow, she had survived. She had not only survived, she had overcome it. The room felt lighter, charged with a quiet energy that seemed to ripple through the mansion. I realized then that this was more than relief, it was a kind of liberation, a freedom that the Whitmore house had never known. "James," Lily whispered, her voice still weak from exhaustion, "you saw it, right? You saw it all. The curse, it's gone. Or at least, it won't touch us again." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "I saw it. I can't believe it, but I know it's true." The reality of what had happened, the danger, the shadows, the rituals, still lingered in my mind, vivid and undeniable. And yet, there was a strange calmness in the air, as if the house itself had acknowledged the end of an era of fear. She stood slowly, stretching her limbs, and I noticed something I hadn't before, the subtle tremor in her hands, the faint pallor of her skin, and the weariness in her posture. Despite her victory, the toll of the night was evident. "You did something incredible," I said softly. "I don't think anyone else could have done what you just did." Lily's eyes softened, and she gave a small, tired smile. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "You were here. You believed in me. That mattered. More than you realize." Her words were simple, yet filled with a depth that made my chest ache. The bond formed through shared fear, trust, and courage was something that could not be broken, no matter how dark the shadows had been. As we walked down the hall toward the main floor, the morning sun filtered through the windows, casting warm light over the dusty furniture. For the first time, I noticed details I had missed before, the delicate patterns of the wallpaper, the small cracks in the walls that hinted at the mansion's age, and the portraits of the Whitmore ancestors, now almost peaceful, their eyes no longer oppressive but solemn, as if acknowledging the end of their torment. In the garden outside, the overgrown plants swayed gently in the breeze. The mansion had survived centuries of fear, secrets, and tragedy, but now it seemed almost reborn. Lily paused at the threshold, looking back at the house. "It's strange," she said quietly, "to feel like something so heavy is gone. Like a weight lifted that I didn't even realize I'd been carrying my whole life." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The curse had haunted generations, shaping lives, dictating fates, and yet here we were, standing on the threshold of something new. There was relief, yes, but also a quiet hope, a sense that the future could finally be different. We walked together down the path, the morning light warming our faces. For a moment, the mansion seemed alive in a new way, no longer a place of fear but of memory, lessons, and survival. Lily looked at me, determination returning to her gaze, tempered with the wisdom of what she had endured. "There's still work to be done," she said. "The world is full of curses, some visible, some hidden. But I know I can face them. I know we can face them." I smiled faintly, humbled by her courage. "And I'll be here," I said. "Through whatever comes next." We turned to leave the mansion, the sun rising higher, bathing the grounds in golden light. The Whitmore curse had been confronted, and though its echoes might linger, it no longer had the power to claim another life. Standing there with Lily, I realized that we had witnessed something truly extraordinary. And as we walked away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation, a pull toward the unknown. There was another story on your screen right now, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. And, if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. There's so much more I want to share with you. The curse was over, but our journey, the real journey, was only beginning.